Hi and welcome. I'm Steve Martorano, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while. Hi, everybody. Welcome again to the Behavioral Corner. It's me. I actually get compensated for hanging on the corner. At least that's the conceit. It's a great corner, the Behavioral Corner. It's a podcast about everything because everything affects our behavioral health. It's all made possible by our great partners, our underwriting partners, Retreat Behavioral Health. As I've told you in the past, you'll hear more about them down the road. But as I've told you many times in the past, they not only keep the lights on here, but they also are a great reservoir of expert people to talk about substance abuse and treatment and mental health and treatment as well. So we rely upon them from time to time. And we're going to do that again today with an old pal of ours from this life and a couple of others, as a matter of fact, Jim Duffy. Jim is with Retreat Behavioral Health now. He is the business, what's the
business development manager.
There you go. He's got a title and everything. And he's an old pal, I said, of this program and me personally. What we do is, Jim, throughout the year, we will do what we call Voices in Recovery. And I like to say that all stories of substance abuse and recovery are the same, except they're different. Mm-hmm. And we run them not so much for the particular details of the story, although they are helpful and fascinating, but because the intent is to remind people that as serious as substance abuse is, and it certainly is serious, people get well, people recover. It's critically important to remind people of this. You can tell them about treatments, and you can tell them about devastation that's caused by this disease, but you got to remind people that lots of people get well. They maintain their sobriety, and they put their lives back together. So that's what our series of these programs are about. And we couldn't be more delighted to have Jim with us, since as we record this, he is now into this first day of the fourth decade of being sober. Congratulations, Jim Duffy, 39 years of sobriety.
Thank you, Steve.
It's an extraordinary achievement. You are, I think, way out in front on the length of your sobriety, as in terms of our guests. So I'm delighted. It's so timely to have you here. 39 years is an extraordinary achievement, and while it is at the far end of the spectrum on maintaining sobriety, you're living proof that it's possible. You're the poster boy of what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Let's go way back now and talk about your situation. What was your problem way back when you had the problem? And more specifically, what was the first thing you did on the way to those 39 years?
Thanks, Steve. It's good to be here with you again. It's been a few years. For me, the first attempt at recovery was actually when I was in the military, and I'd gotten in trouble. Alcohol was the culprit, which was my best friend. But when I drank, I had a tendency to either end up in the hospital, locked up, beat up, or all the above, which happened in this case. And in the military, they want to discipline you for acting out. And I don't know where I came out with this solution was, well, I think I have a drinking problem. First time I ever said that. And I was really looking to get out of trouble. I wasn't looking to stop drinking, knew nothing, absolutely nothing about alcoholism. I just knew I didn't want to get in trouble. And they sent me to this little old counselor across the base. And he showed me this film. It's called Chalk Talks. This is 1975, September. And for the first time in my adult life, I'm getting education on alcoholism. And I find myself laughing about this priest who's telling jokes, but identifying with the behaviors. Some of them I hadn't gotten to yet. but some of them I already had. And I knew in my heart that that's me. I'm an alcoholic. And he gave me the solution. The solution was go to AA. So I did. 19 years old, I went to AA, and they welcomed me. They told me their stories, and I stayed in there. I went to a lot of meetings down in Fort Rucker, Alabama, and stayed sober for 30 days. Then I was out of trouble, so I was out of AA. But the important piece was the seed was planted. I knew in my heart I was an alcoholic, and I knew there was a solution. I wasn't ready.
So yeah, so prior to that, though, you're your typical, what's the phrase they use? Gold brick, messing around, getting in trouble. You're just a kid,
Yeah.
right? Just
Yes.
a kid, 19 years old. So I get it. This is like, okay, whatever I got to do just to not wind up in this jackpot again, show me the way. And then you see this movie and you go, huh, how about that? Now, you're a little unique here in the story that you tell about getting to your first meeting, in that you're 19 again. And as I said, I've spoke to many people who tell that exact story. And every one of them says that, almost every one of them says the same thing about that first meeting. They sit down and they're not more than 20 minutes into it before they go, who the hell are these people? I'm not, they're all older than you. Most of them are older than you. Most of them have war stories that, you go, oh my God, I'm not this crowd. You didn't have that experience?
Absolutely had that experience. I looked at them. I knew they were old because they were in their 30s, 40s. There was a couple in their 50s. And a 19-year-old male, Steve, I was interested in one other thing besides drinking. That was women. And there weren't a lot of women down in southern Alabama. So, yeah.
How do you, that moment, I get that moment. I've heard that. I'm not first of all, I've never been in this situation. I've mercifully been spared this problem, but I certainly understand the I'm not a joiner attitude. I kind of feel like that. I like hanging out and I like other people, but I don't like, organizations. I don't like, oh, you got to be here at this time. You got to do these things. How did you get past that at 19, where it's so easy to go, I don't need this, I'm okay?
Well, the motivation at that point, obviously, was the United States government, who said, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And once I didn't need to do it, I was gone. But
yeah. But
I never forgot.
You're not giving yourself enough credit here. There are a lot of guys who set down that road for the most obvious reason. I don't want to get another jam, but still go back to their bad habits. You did some of that.
Yeah, I did that too. I went back to drinking. But in the back of my mind, every time I drank, every jackpot I got into, and I continued that, the pattern didn't change. The only thing that changed was the characters that were around me, the places I was at. I had been escorted out of Panama City Beach, Florida, saying, please don't come back. It was that bad. Because we like to have fun. We drank and we raised hell.
You were thrown out of the entire city?
Oh, yeah. Don't come back, please.
You know what? You'll be familiar with the phrase euphoric recall.
Oh, yeah.
I remember the first time I met all you guys. You were all in the business now of sobriety and treatment. But there were these stories, and they were all colorful.
Yes.
Just like yours, like guys who would wake up in a strange room, peek through the drapes, and then wonder how palm trees got in Pennsylvania. Okay, so those stories interested me. And then somebody later on said to me, yes, Steve, those are called euphoric recalls. And in treatment or in the rooms, what they always say is, yeah, finish the story though. What's the rest of the story?
Oh, yeah. Right, getting locked up, getting beat up.
I smashed the car. I did.
Yeah.
Right. So the story always ends the same, but it's one of those, I've been asked to leave bars, but not a whole city. So that's amazing. All right. So anyway, so you make these stumbling first steps, and then when does it gain traction for you?
It took 10 more years, Steve. And it was a combination of I didn't want to go to AA. I'll do anything. I'm smart. I can figure this out, how to beat this problem, this alcohol. So I tried my own way. I would move from no more liquor. I'm just going to drink beer. No more beer. I'm going to drink wine. No, I'm just going to smoke pot. I'm just going to do, it was always some kind of combination where I'm going to do it my way. The jackpots would come back. And when I get to a point where, oh, I can't take this anymore, or the pressure's on, well, then I would try another program. I used to visit the VA in Coatesville. They would sober me up and say, you should go to AA. I'm like, I know what I got to do. And that was the problem. I always said I knew and then didn't do anything. I went back to the same corner, doing the same thing. And if nothing changes, Steve, nothing changes.
Nothing changes. Yeah. Yeah.
It took me getting married, having a couple kids very quickly. She had 2 kids, so I was married with 4 kids at the age of 29. I had a good job, worked for the shipyard at the time, so I had a job, but it was still there. The jackpots. I had another DUI. I got in another fight. I got beat up in the hospital. So the same things were still happening, and I have responsibility. I couldn't stop. And I remember looking at my 6-month-old daughter in January 1985 and say, why can't I stop? And for me, I literally screamed out, God, please help me. The next day I got into rehab, and I didn't know anything about rehabs. I knew about AA. I knew about the VA. But for the first time, the change was, you want me to do what? Okay, I'll try it. So willing to take direction, willing to do things that, in my mind, sounded absolutely nonsensical. But you know what? I'm going to try. I'm going to look in the mirror and say, I like you. I'm like, are you kidding me? You want me to look in the mirror and tell that guy that I love you? Yeah, that's not happening. But I did it. So whatever they suggested, I tried. And at the end of it, it's like, well, you know what you need to do? Here we go again. You want me to go to that damn AA? But I had been there. I tried NA. I knew that was the solution, but I still had the same apprehension. I still had the same fear walking into that next meeting. I had my list. I got out at 10 o'clock in the morning. My meeting was at 9 o'clock at night. I knew by 11 o'clock, I wasn't going to make it till 9 o'clock. And I ended up at a noon meeting at a clubhouse where they have meetings throughout the day.
Right.
As soon as I got there, that relief was there. Like, I'm home. I'm safe.
Wow.
Maybe.
You have no doubt that if you tried to make it till 9, you would have been in trouble again.
No, I wouldn't have make it till 9. No.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you had the presence of mind to go, this isn't working. Let me ask you a question, whether or not those early, I won't say failures, but difficulties with AA, as opposed to your first trip to rehab, was the different context you found yourself in. Some people, I think, have the mistaken notion that AA is a treatment for substance abuse when it is not. It does not treat the problem. It supports people who are in treatment, trying to get sober. Was it that shift where you went, okay, this is now a medical issue. Now I'm in with professionals who are, it would be like ignoring a doctor telling you to stop eating sweets when you've got diabetes. You start to take it seriously if it's in that medical context. Did that work in your mind that way?
Not the medical piece. What the biggest part was, the facility I went through, you had a lot of recovering people working then as therapists, which still happens today. So you were getting that, but the magic actually happened within the community, which is similar to when you leave and you get involved in AA. So the community is where the treatment actually happens. Yeah, you go in the group, you have a counselor, he helps you with things, or she helps you with things, but it's in the community, seeing people's lives starting to change and starting to trust for the first time in many years what you're hearing is the truth. And here's a way out of the way you're feeling. Here's a permanent way out if you follow the direction. So for me, that was, I saw the information. It didn't matter for me with the education piece that I could figure out why I'm an alcoholic or what started. It didn't matter. For me, once I put alcohol in this body, all bets were off. And there was too many examples.
Too much evidence. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
That's a deep insight, though. The giving up, wondering, why, and going, who cares why? Let's stop this.
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about, because I don't, when people ask me about AA, and I've been to some meetings, I've observed them, I think I understand its background and how it operates. And people say, what do you think? I say, well, it works for the people it works for, without a doubt. Without a doubt. You
Yes.
have no doubt, as you're sitting here 39 years into your sobriety, that had you not followed their model, you'd be in trouble today.
Absolutely. The program in itself, the 12 steps, is your path to change the person you are. So if you look at those steps that they offer you, they say suggestions. The only one that talks about alcohol is the first step. The other one's about you getting in touch with a higher power, dealing with the stuff you did before, and then moving on. How do I change my life? And how do I learn to be a more accountable person? That's what that piece is. And at the end, it's like, all right, if you want to keep this, you need to help others.
Yep. Let me ask you: were you a religious person when you finally got into the AA groove?
No.
So how did you deal with this? How did you deal with this God thing or greater power thing?
That's a great question. For me, I did have a religious background. So growing up, I was exposed to organized religion. I look at stuff and I'm like, why would God let all this stuff happen? So for me, spirituality is, God to me is love. There's all these different religions, and if you look at the core of what they're trying to do is love one another, be helpful, contribute. But they have the rules. So I question rules. I don't care what religion it is. I'll question, well, why don't you want me to eat meat on Friday? I mean, God didn't say that. Why do you want me to wear this type of clothes? God didn't say that. What I know for me is this spirit, this higher power. And for me in the beginning, it was the people in the rooms. God comes to me through people in recovery and says, hey, why don't you try this? So I'm still open to those suggestions, which is how I got in this field to begin with. And how I've grown personally is people saying, you know what, you can do that. Why don't you try that? And not dependent on Jim Duffy thinking, you know what, that's a good idea. Let me do that. Every time that happens, I have a tendency to end up in a place I shouldn't be.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And this is why we love these programs and we think they're valuable. And that is that once, and again, I've heard these stories, once the substance abuser can get out of the way, it's interesting to think of the person with the problem having to get out of the way and let the program work. That's another way of talking about surrender.
Yeah,
I can't do this by myself anymore. There's got to be something outside there that I can rely upon. And is that what you mean by a greater power? Something other than yourself?
Oh, definitely. For me, the first experience that I could see as tangible was Alcoholics Anonymous. They loved me when I was questioning, what am I? I've done all these things. How could anybody trust me? How could anybody love me? How could anybody keep telling me to keep coming back? And as I went forward, I was actually feeling pretty good. My career at the shipyard got sidetracked when the FBI visited me, and that just threw a wrench in everything.
Mhm.
But I had the support of Alcoholics Anonymous. My sponsor said, I'm not a lawyer, but it sounds like you might need one. I can get you to a meeting. I can help you stay sober no matter what happens. And they did, because a few months later, at 11 months sober, my son was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And that was devastating. Every day that we were at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, AA showed up every single day. They carried my family through that.
Mhm.
They always asked, how's Jimmy doing? What can we do to help? So all the treatments and everything that I've been through, as long as I put it out there and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, they surround you, they lift you up, and they carry you through it.
Jim Duffy is our guest. Jim is a colleague. He works with the Retreat Behavioral Health in their business development department. He's the manager there, and he's celebrating 39 years of sobriety. How many times were you in strict rehab? Have you went through rehab? Was it more than one visit, or?
That's not an easy question to answer. So I went to the VA and told them I needed detox, and they did that. So I was there 7 days. Then 2 months later, I went back and said, I need detox. They did that, and I left because I had the answers. And then a few months later, I said, oh, by the way, I went back because my life was spiraling out of control. This was 1979. I said, by the way, I'm doing an awful lot of methamphetamine too. So they put me in a different program, which I stayed for 6 weeks. They wanted me there for 6 months. That wasn't my plan.
Right.
So there's 3 experiences where at least I was exposed once again to therapy.
Well,
When I went,
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
when I went to the last facility, I stayed the length of time they asked me to stay. I even at the end, I was getting out on Monday. I said, well, why can't I leave on Friday? You never know what's going to happen between Friday and Monday. You need to stay. So I stayed.
Yeah. Well, lots of bad things can happen between Friday and Monday. Whether you think about it, I just wanted to make the point that so that we didn't give people the idea that these 39 years just dropped in your lap and you were, off and running. There was it's a battle. It's a battle for sure. So I certainly understand how after a period of time, I'm not certain how much that time is, being sober and working at being sober becomes a kind of self-fulfilling, not prophecy so much as motivator. I don't want to trivialize this, but it's nothing helps you stay on your fitness program or your weight loss program than the fact that you're losing weight, right? It's go, well, here's my weight, lost another 2 pounds. I got to keep at it. There is a multiplier effect as you go deeper into sobriety. You're in a great position to talk about that. You must think, my God, I've got so much to lose if I ever messed up. 39 years, right?
Absolutely. It's been a journey. In the beginning, my fear was, so being still in my 20s was, well, what am I going to do? And what I found out was, as I surrounded myself with like-minded alcoholics, drug addicts, who had the same interest. I liked playing ball. So I got involved with guys. We volunteered. That's how I ended up in working at a facility. We would go there and play softball with the patients. It was great. That's how they saw me and said, well, you're really good with patients. Did you ever consider working at a treatment facility? I'm like, no, I'm a pipe fitter.
Right.
You want me to make how much money?
Right.
But the camaraderie with the people I played ball with, we started a team. And then there was a recovery league, and everything we did that I used to do drinking, I was doing sober with sober people and saying, wait a second, life's the same. There's just no alcohol. And that slowly built. and I would sit in the meetings. I remember early on sitting in, and I would hear these people saying, yeah, I'm in college, I'm doing this. And I'd say to my sponsor, man, I want to go to college. And he would look at me, he would take that little sigh and he goes, you got to learn how to stay sober first.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff will come. You just have to stay sober. And that was the key.
Yeah. How'd you find that first sponsor? Did they reach out to you, or how did that happen?
For me, the first guy I asked, his name was Jimmy A. up in Levittown, older guy, 9 years sober, which I thought was unbelievable. And I said, Jimmy, can I have your phone number? And he was an angry guy. And he looked at me and said, no, too many people already have my number. I was like, oh, man. So it was this other guy who was a little crazy, identified with him, Charlie. And he was at the clubhouse. I said, Charlie, would you be my sponsor? He said, well, by the rules, I can't because I only have a year. You should have somebody with at least 2 years. I'm like, that's two. I'm like, I'm going to try this one more. It was right around 90 days. I'm like, I'm trying to do this, what they suggested. People are saying no, or they don't have enough time. So there was a guy at my home group, a Teamster, Jimmy Tompkins, God rest his soul. And I looked up to him and I said, at the break, I said, Jimmy, would you be my sponsor? And he had that stunned look on his face, and I'm like, oh, here we go again. He said, just give me a minute. Well, here, Jimmy just had 2 years sober and he had never sponsored anybody. So he wanted to check with his sponsor. Is it okay? Is he ready? And his sponsor said, yes, you are. He became my first sponsor. And he was involved in this thing called service, Philadelphia Intergroup. And when you have a sponsor that's involved in service, you're involved. So I went from the periphery, from the outside, closer to the center of the circle. And that's the circle that kept me safe when I would have some difficult times in my life. What I loved about Jimmy, he had the same background as I had. So I was a labor guy. He was a labor guy, but he loved sports.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I'm struck by the immersive nature of this, that the deeper you get into the sober, ethic, the more you surround yourself with the idea of not abusing substances, the stronger you can become. When you talk to people, well, first, before we do that, you've done the 12 steps, I take?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We've had a couple of deep discussions about what step 3 means to you, or step 5. Did you have difficulty with the steps, or were they relatively simple for you once you got a handle on, I'm going to do this?
The first 3, at least at the treatment center I was at back in the day, you had to do the first 5 steps before you left treatment. Mm-hmm. So the first one, surrendering, not a big deal. Mm-hmm. The second one, all right, there is a higher power that can help me with this. And the third one, I think I'll let them. Now there's a 3rd step prayer. So here I am in the treatment center. The thing I didn't want to do was called the 4th step, which was write down all the stuff that I did wrong. So 1st step was easy. Second, the 3rd step, my counselors pushed me. When are you going to take the 3rd step? It's a little prayer. So I went actually in the woods and said this prayer because one of the founders had this spiritual awakening. So I say this prayer and then I'm waiting
for the white light.
Yeah, something. I went even a little breeze, something. And what I've learned is that's a continuum. That if you looked at me then, you look at me now, it'd be like, wow, how did that happen? That's the spiritual awakening.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the moment did happen. It just didn't. I'm presuming here. The moment did happen when you went. I'm going to go in the woods here, and I'll say this. I don't know what it's going to do. I'll just say it. But that was that's the moment. It's not a blinding light. It's not a bush burning. It's not a voice from the clouds. It's damn it, I'll go in the woods and do this, right? Just an amazing story. These stories are really uplifting. So those for people sitting out there going, I can't do any of this stuff. I can't. Jimmy Duffy went in the woods because he was a little embarrassed at having to say this prayer, which he wasn't quite sure he believed. Well, what the hell? I'll do it. That's the
Right.
moment. That is the moment. Look, there are many pitfalls that people in sobriety are going to confront. When you talk to people who are trying to recover and are stressed, are there tips you give them on what to avoid and how they can not stumble? Because relapse is actually part of recovery. I mean, it's not something
Right.
the end of the world, but it's a real setback. What do you tell people about the kind of dangers that lurk out there?
Good question, Steve. There's a lot of situations, especially in early recovery, where I need to be honest enough with myself when something's starting to affect me, but I have my plan in place. So if somebody's sharing, I just heard a guy talk about going to a wedding, but alcohol didn't bother him and he was only a few months sober. Now, I can relate to that because I had a similar experience. My sister was getting married in May. I got out in March, so it's pretty close. And I talked about it because I was worried. There's going to be people drinking. How am I going to handle this? My family's going to be there. They don't trust me to begin with. And they said, "What? Do you have phone numbers?" Yes. Do you have an exit strategy? Well, what do you mean? What's an exit strategy? Well, if you're feeling uncomfortable, you need to get out of there. Tell your sister that you may have to leave. And I was surprised. She was like, "That's not a problem." So I'm sitting there at the table, not drinking, and I already noticed that Ann is on her third beer. Now, what normal person knows that Ann is on her third beer? That was an indication that I'm focused on alcohol, not Ann Ida. And I said, you know what? Time for me to go. I went to a meeting. So having that backup plan, I don't have to put myself in that jeopardy. So sharing those stories with newcomers that, yeah, this is going to happen. You need to be honest enough with yourself and have the plan. They give it
Yeah,
to you.
yeah. Be alert. That brings me to the notion of the role family and friends relationships played in your recovery. How important were and how much time did it take for them to get on board and go, okay, he may have to leave the wedding. I got it, right? Tell me about that.
For in my situation, because I had pretty much burned every bridge with my family that was there, it took them a while to trust me again.
Mhm.
So the communication, uh, they were always worried. Jimmy's coming. Should we hide the beer? Should we hide the booze? And then if they were coming to my house, like my daughter had a christening, like, should we have alcohol there? And my father sees maybe my uncles could be in this program. The way they were looking, because you got to get a case of beer for them. All right. So the family slowly, it took years, Steve, for
Mhm.
them to finally like, oh, wait a second. He is doing this thing. He didn't go back to the old ways. He's not stealing from us. He's not lying to us. And wait a second, my son's having a problem. Maybe you should talk to him.
Mm.
So that took a while. I have a nephew who's celebrating 30 something years this year, and he's doing great. He changed his whole life at a young age.
Yeah, it's amazing how someone abusing alcohol or any substance starts out as a destructive force within the family, and with the grace of whoever and some hard work, you not only stop doing that, but you can wind up helping the family that you were so
Mm-hmm.
they were plaguing them. It's a real strengthening thing. I've seen that in folks like you. That service notion is a very powerful motivator. Jimmy, thanks so much, man. With Jim and I go back a couple of years in this thing. It's been too long since you've been on the corner. Your stories are worth hearing over and over again. 39 years, you're beginning your fourth decade. You may be young enough to notch another 40. You may, if you hold up pretty good. Either way, it's a great achievement, and you are an inspiration for people out there. Jimmy can do it; they can do it, right?
Amen. Absolutely, Steve. Recovery is possible for anybody. And when I'm working with somebody, especially if they're like not sure, you see that look in their eyes. And I always ask them, I said, can you do it? And without hesitation, most of them will look in the eye and say yes. And then I'll ask them another question. Do you deserve it? And they say, yes, I do. I said, then let's get it. Mm-hmm. It always concerns me when somebody's head goes down, their eyes go down, they're like, in that hesitation, because they're not believing that they deserve this, and they do.
That's a huge insight. Yeah, everybody deserves to be happy. Everybody deserves to have a whole life. Jim Duffy, thanks so much, man. We got to share a cigar at some point.
I stopped cigars.
Oh, you stopped? Good for you. Okay, well then you're not coming to the party. No. Jim Duffy, thanks, bud. I really appreciate it.
Steve, always a pleasure. I appreciate you.
Congratulations again. Hey guys, thank you as well. Don't forget, wherever podcasts can be podcast, you'll find the Behavioral Corner there. We hope you will subscribe and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, wherever else they throw us. We appreciate it. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Retreat Behavioral Health has proudly been serving the community for over 10 years. Here at Retreat, we believe in the power of connection and quality care. We offer comprehensive, holistic, and compassionate treatment from industry-leading experts. Call 855-802-6600 or visit us at www.retreatbehavioralhealth.com to begin your journey today.
That's it for now. And make us a habit, hanging out at the Behavioral Corner. And when we're not hanging, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on the Behavioral Corner.